This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins. A moment to feel alive. This is where it all begins. A moment to feel alive. This is where it all begins. A moment this good to you. Best day of our lives. Yeah. A moment to feel alive. This is where it all begins.
Well, good morning, Story Hill Church. How's everybody doing today? Yes, if we've never had the opportunity to meet, my name is Aaron. I'm the lead pastor here. And if you are brand new, if like it's your first Sunday ever, we're so honored that you're here. Today's actually our 4th birthday as a church. We started this church 4 years ago, back in August of 2018, and we've been in this space since about Easter, and so, if you're brand new, we're so excited that you're here, and I look forward to meeting each of you, and we're kind of in the middle. We're on week 2 of this new series called Start Here. The reason that we do this kind of every fall is just to be very, very transparent, authentic, if you will, about who we are as a church. So we're spending a few weeks looking at the foundations, like the values of what we cling onto as a church, like the lenses that we think through, that we look through, that make all of our decisions as a church. Last week, we started off with our primary first, that is that we are gospel-centered. The word gospel literally just means good news. This is the good news of Jesus, and the good news of Jesus is our center. It's where everything flows from. And today is our second foundation, which is that we are city and campus focused. City and campus focused. When we look at the life of Jesus, he lived for others, and he focused on others, and then he calls us to do the same. And so that's all what we're going to unpack today. I just kind of want to give you a quick snapshot of what it is. So there's a moment in Jesus' life recorded in one of the Gospels where he is just honest and transparent about who he is and what the purpose of his life. And so Luke 19 tells us, where this is Jesus quoting, he says, "For the Son of Man," and this is kind of a term that was a messianic term that was attached to the Messiah, of which Jesus was the Messiah. So he's saying, I have come to seek and save the lost. Now, like, kind of interesting language. Who is lost? What does that mean, and why is Jesus focusing his attention on those that are lost? So, every single person fits into this category, is lost. Again, kind of a strange term, but lost in the sense that we are born disobedient. We are born selfish. We're born sinners. I've got 3 amazing kids. I've got a 14-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old named Graham. And the longer you're here, you'll probably hear me share some stories about my kids or my family and stuff like that. Graham is in just this incredible age that is constantly reminding me of what is life at that age. And because it's been a few years, we've got 2 older kids and now we have a younger one. And there's never a dull moment in our household. I don't know if you have young kids or maybe baby brothers or sisters, or if you're like an aunt or an uncle or something like that. But there's just never a dull moment. And so a few weeks ago, I was hanging out with Graham in his room, and he was like, "Dad, I want to have a picnic I'm like, great, let's have a picnic. He has some like play food and stuff like that. And so he grabbed this blanket from his room, okay? And if you look at it, I mean, it's like the perfect picnic blanket, you know? And so he put it on the floor, and he's sitting on one end of it, and I'm like trying to fit on the other side of it. And he's going to get his food and stuff like that. And we're a few minutes into playing, and I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot. This is my baby blanket, okay? We've held on to it for a long time. I don't sleep with it currently, okay? I'm curious to like survey the new freshmen that moved in, like how many of them brought their favorite stuffed animal. You don't have to raise your hand, but I know that's real, okay? And I was like, Graham, did you know that this was my baby blanket? And he's like, wow, Dad. And I was like, I'm pretty sure my family wrote me a special message on it. And I flipped it over, and I was like, Graham, look, my family wrote this. It says, Aaron, and I was like, that's me. I'm your dad. My name is Aaron. We love you. I couldn't get the word you completed, okay? I was like, it says, Aaron, we love you. And he's like, no. And he walks over and he goes, it does not say that, Daddy. It says, Aaron, we do not love you, and we want to spank you. And I'm like, what is happening right now? I mean, I'm like, no, Graham, it says that he's like, no, it says we do not love you, and we want to spank you. Oh, probably such a litmus test for my life right now, but like, we don't model that for my 3-year-old, okay? Like, it's just in him to push, to rebel, to disobey. It's because my 3-year-old's a sinner. And as much as I like laughing about that story and it's funny to me, there is a real spiritual problem with him and with all of us. One day, my youngest son will have to decide if he wants to commit his life to Jesus. All of us do. All of us are born lost. In fact, Ephesians 2 tells us that we are dead in our trespasses and sins. Every person is lost. All of us separated from God. But the unbelievable, most crucial part of that truth is that, I guess I'd rather say the reality, is that not every single person realizes this truth. Jesus also tells us in one of the gospel accounts in the book of Mark, he says, it is not those who are well who need a doctor, but those who are sick. I didn't come to call the righteous, but sinners. So the most crucial part is understanding that we actually are sick. And Jesus is using a play on words in this sentence because the truth is every single person is sick. But guys, we are so often convinced through our experience, through our own belief or the culture that we live in, or this attempt at morality of like, I'm just going to do more good and a little bit more and outweigh my bad, or simply just our desires. We convince ourselves that we do not need or want what Jesus offers us, and Jesus cuts through this thought like a surgeon. But do you actually understand that you are sick and in need of a doctor? And of course, all of that is a metaphor to the reason that God sent him on the mission that he lived. Because there is a God, and he did make you. You're made in his image. He loves you, and he has a plan for your life. And depending on how you respond to that truth determines your eternity. Either being eternally separated from God or eternally in relationship with him. So every single person is faced with that. And that's why we're gospel-centered, because that is the good news of Jesus. But it doesn't just end there. It doesn't just stop at this like, you know what, that's a really great idea or a concept. So should I just like coast through life now and just wait till the good Lord calls me home? Like, is that what we do? No. Jesus invites us, all those that are committed to him, that raise their hand and say, you know what? I don't have everything figured out. Just like Dana was talking about earlier, I need some grace. Like, I'm still broken, but Jesus, I love you, and I'm going to do this life with you. He invites every single person to follow in his footsteps, to live in the same purpose that he lived. John chapter 17, Jesus is actually recorded here praying for his disciples. So we're reading like a prayer, an inner like depth thought prayer that Jesus records for us. He says, I have given them being anyone that has committed their life to him, disciples, your word, which is truth. The world hated them because they are not of the world, just as I, Jesus, am not of the world. And watch this. He says, God, I'm not praying that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. They are not of the world, just as I am not of the world. Sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. Standard. Foundation. It's like bankable. And then verse 18. As you sent me into this world, I have also sent them into the world. So God sent Jesus, and then Jesus sends us. It's kind of like not super common language that we often attach ourselves to, you know? Like maybe when you were a kid, like your parents or guardians or sibling or something gave you like $5 and like drove up in front of the grocery store and they sent you in to like get a bag of ice or something like that, and you're like walking in like, I got money, help, you know, like here, deal with this, like I have been sent, you know, like maybe your roommate sent you to get a food run, you know, and even then we're probably not like really leveraging that language, you know, where they have this moment of like, the pizzas are ready at 5. We are sending you, go, you know, and it's just like, go get the pizzas, dude, okay? You know, I think if I became like an Uber driver or something like that, I would adopt this language of like, you have sent for me. I am now sending you out when they get out of the car. You know, my stars would just take, I know that, okay? Like, it's not language that we often use, but this word, send, in the original Greek ancient language that the Bible was written in, the New Testament, it's actually the word apostolo. Now, if that like kind of has a ring of familiarity to it, it's because it's the root word for the word apostle. Like the apostles that walked with Jesus. The disciples, that kind of use those words interchangeably. The word send, the word apostolo, means is that you are not just sent and like, see ya, it's you are sent as a messenger, that you have been commissioned with deep, intrinsic, life-changing purpose to go. And this is how Jesus sends us, because this is how God sent Jesus. He commissioned him, he commissions us. So, I think it's good to ask the question. So, like, if God sent Jesus on this mission and he commissioned him to live on purpose, like, what did Jesus do? You know, and that's why we have these 4 gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, to help us, like these eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life, to help us see what he did. You know what he did? He focused the vast majority of his life on others. He gave his attention, his time. He sacrificed, he loved, he pursued, he discipled from city, to home, to person, And then he looked at everyone who was following him and said, go do the same. I am now commissioning you. So this is the background and the motive for our foundation of being city and campus focused. Think about the Gospels, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the 4 eyewitness accounts of Jesus' life, think about it as like season 1, okay? And then Jesus died, beat death. That's why we worship him and sing songs about him. And then looked at his disciples and said, I'm commissioning you. Peace. I'm out. And he left. And the book of Acts in the New Testament is like, so what happened? It's everything that the disciples did. And so we think about that as like season 2 of this kind of story, you know? There's an incredible story in the book of Acts, chapter 17. So if you have your Bibles, I would encourage you to turn to that. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, okay? Acts chapter 17. There's an incredible story in here that helps illuminate this even further. We're going to be starting in verse 16. Acts, and if you don't have your Bible, that's fine. We will have everything on the screen. Chapter 17, verse 16. It says, while Paul was waiting for them in Athens. Now, okay, pause real quick. Paul was, how is the best way to describe it? To Christians, Paul was basically a terrorist. He pursued Christians. He did not like their message. He was antagonistic against them, and to the point where he even killed some for preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then he met Jesus, and his life changed forever. And he spent the rest of his life being commissioned, sent, with the same purpose that Jesus had. So Paul was moving from town to town, and he shows up to Athens. Has anybody ever been to Athens? So cool. We had like 3 people in the first service that had been to Athens. I just want to like step behind your eyeballs, and that's weird. I regret saying that right now, but like I just want to see what you've seen, you know, like because all the history that's there. So Paul is in Athens. He rolls up to this city, and then it says this: he was deeply distressed when he saw that the city was full of idols. So Athens was this ancient Greek city. The culture there was polytheistic, which that's a like fancy word for they worshiped many gods. Poly means many, theistic gods. So they just whoever. And they had idols and shrines made of wood and stone and silver and gold all throughout the city to all of these named gods, okay? And it says that Paul was broken, deeply distressed. This word, deeply distressed, in the original language is actually just one word, and it literally means to be provoked or upset at someone or having severe emotional concern. It wasn't like Paul walked up to Athens and was like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Oh, bummer. Okay, let's go down and talk to a few people. Like he was moved with gut-wrenching compassion of brokenness that drove him to engage, just like Jesus would. Verse 17, so he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and with those who worshiped God, as well as in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers, I'm going to explain that in a second, also debated with him. Some said, what is this ignorant show-off trying to say? Others replied, he seems to be a preacher of foreign deities because he was telling the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. They took him and brought him to the Areopagus. Did you get to see the Areopagus when you were there? Did you see the hill up in Athens? It was so cool. Eyeballs. It's like, so, okay, in Athens, there is this large, like, natural rock formation that's, like, exposed, kind of a white stone rock, and it sits at one of the higher points of the city, and you can go up there, and you can, like, look at all of Athens. And this is where the smartest people The greatest thinkers, the philosophers, they just went up there and just debated and talked. What do you have to say? I have this to say. What do you have to say? And they just, engaged in conversation over and over. And so this was like the culture of the Areopagus, and said, may we learn about this new teaching you are presenting, because what you say sounds strange to us, and we want to know what these things mean. Now, all the Athenians and the foreigners residing there spent their time on nothing else, like I said, but telling or hearing something new. All right, Epicureans. Who are these people? Feels very distant from us. Like, anybody met an Epicurean recently? Didn't think so. Okay, so the Epicureans believed in this school of philosophy that valued pleasure above anything, which means they wanted the absence of pain, of suffering, of disturbance, and they just wanted pleasure. Whatever made them happy, whatever brought them temporary satisfaction, like, I want that. Anything that causes me discomfort, I don't want that, okay? They disbelieved in the gods of the ancient myths, which was so against so many of the people that surrounded them, and probably not a huge surprise. They were only influential in the upper educated classes. Because, it makes sense. Like, if they're, have some money and they're educated and they're doing their thing, and if they, were struggling to provide for their family, that was probably a philosophy that may not be as easy for them. But, they're sitting on their stone things, with their monies, and they're just like, yeah, well, let's just pursue pleasure. Let's not do anything that makes us, suffer or causes us pain. This is who the Epicureans were. Stoicism was actually the most popular form of Greek philosophy during this time. This is, okay, let me just do a side note here. I was unbelievably shocked, and I shouldn't have been, but I was so shocked once learning the history of who these people groups were, the Epicureans, the Stoics. There is very little that has changed from 2,000 years ago in ancient Athens to our life today. How many people do we know in our lives that they don't want disturbance, they don't want pain, they don't want discomfort, and they just want to pursue pleasure? They want to live for the weekend. That's the greatest achievement. Stoics, the majority of people in that day, they saw the world as determined by fate and advocated that human beings must pursue their duty, resigning themselves to live in harmony with nature and reason and develop their own perfected self-sufficiency. I feel like I know hundreds of people today that are Stoics, but we just don't use that language anymore. Verse 22 says, Paul stood in the middle of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that you are extremely religious in every respect. For as I was passing through and observing the objects of your worship, I even found an altar on which was inscribed, 'To an unknown God.' Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, listen up. I got some things to tell you." The ancient Greeks were terrified that they would offend any god. They were scared. They lived in fear that, they would do something that a god didn't like, and they would cause destruction or wreak havoc and disturb their life, okay? So they literally just had hundreds and hundreds of these shrines and idols, all to these named gods that did different things and for them served different purposes. And there was this logic of like, well, what if we miss one? And they're like mad at us for that. Okay, go carve in the rock a whole shrine, and we'll just put, to whom it may concern. So that way they're happy too. And Paul sees this and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know to whom it may concern, and let me tell you some stuff. Verse 24. He says in verse 23, this I proclaim to you, okay? The God who made the world and everything in it, he is the Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by hands, neither is he served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives everyone life and breath and all things. Paul's words are intentional. They are calculated. He's showing them the futility of idolatry while helping them see that God is the supreme Lord of creation. And if that is true, he is therefore worthy. Worthy of everything. Worthy of our affection, worthy of our devotion, worthy of our allegiance. Because God is not bound by temples. He's not bound by a shrine. You know what they would do? They would carve these shrines into rock faces and put little, man-made idol images, trinket like little, person figure type things in there. And every day, to make the gods happy, they would show up with food and little, gifts and drink and just, maybe like the gods will come down and they'll be satisfied by what we offer them. And Paul's like, what, like terrible gods you worship? Like the God who's made everything, he's not bound by this. He doesn't need your help. He provides for himself and is the provider for all things. Verse 26, he says, for from one man he has made every nationality to live over the whole earth and has determined their appointed times and the boundaries of where they live. If you're looking for a verse on God's sovereignty, incredible verse. He did this so that they might seek God, and perhaps they might reach out and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. Verse 28, for in him we live and move and have our being, as even some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring. Since then we are God's offspring, we shouldn't think that the divine nature is like gold or silver or stone, an image fashioned by human art and imagination. God is sovereign over every aspect of humanity. And what he's saying is that all of us have this innate thirst to find him. And now we carry that out in 1,000 different ways. We were made to worship. We love to worship. We worship things. We worship other people. We worship ourselves. We're made in God's image. He gave us this desire in us to thirst for him, but because of sin, we take that so many directions. And so he says all this, and he says, therefore, verse 30, therefore, having overlooked the times of ignorance, such an incredible statement, God now commands all people everywhere to repent, because he has set a day when he is going to judge the world in righteousness by the man he has appointed. He's talking about Jesus. He has provided proof to this to everyone by raising him from the dead. When they heard about the resurrection of the dead, some began to ridicule him, but others said, hey, Paul, we'd like to hear from you again about this. So Paul left their presence. However, some people joined him and believed, including Dionysius the Areopagite, a woman named Damaris, and others with them. So if this God indeed is the supreme Lord of creation, the wisest thing we can do is turn to him. One, because it's the answer to what we've always been searching for. And two, because we see that God is going to someday judge the world. And Jesus, or Paul here saying that there was a time that God is going to look over people's ignorance, and there will come an end to that. Because God will not tolerate sin forever. He is just as he is loving. Those that openly defy God may prosper for a time, but one day they will have to pay for the sin if they do not repent. So today's our 4th birthday. 6 years ago, my wife and I drove into this city from the north on I-70, and we came into Lawrence. It was my first ever exposure to this place. Obviously, you can't ignore seeing the campus up on the hill later, to find out Mount Oread and just the geography that is this place. And when I began to talk to person after person that lived in this city, what I found was that so many, there were Christians here, but there was a fear for so many Christians to be public about that. There were professors on campus that feared their colleagues knowing that they loved and worshiped Jesus. Now, we may not have Epicureans and Stoics here in Lawrence, Kansas, but we have a city full of people that pursue pleasure, education, philosophy, harmony with nature, self-sufficiency. It's almost like nothing has changed from 2,000 years ago. So we may not have the Areopagus exactly, but we do have campus that sits up on a hill. And so much of life here in Lawrence is unbelievably affected and influenced by what happens on this hill. Thought, culture, sports, politics, belief, unbelievable influence. And the world moves here. Many of you just moved here to go to this hill, which is exactly why we made the hill our logo. Many people don't know that. Some people, did you find the thumbprint of God? This is unbelievable, It's not. It's just the topographical map of KU. And you can see Jayhawk Boulevard right here that takes the turn, slopes down to the football field. Who's going to the football game coming up? Woo! I'm excited. Fraser Hall is like the highest point. You can see it on the top topography map. There's a reason that we built in what is the center of this town in so many ways into the heartbeat of our own church. So the question is, what do? We engage. We focus our time, our energy, our resources in this city and on this campus to share the good news of the gospel with every single person that we can. Being city and campus focused allows us to keep fighting for you, college students, and never giving up on the next generation, and always giving you an opportunity to hear the good news of the gospel, because the ages between 18 to 24, I know I'm going to totally sound like an old person right now, like, let me tell you what happens at your age, kids, But, it's just true. Your age, you make decisions that affect the rest of your entire life. So you should have the opportunity to consider following Jesus in this time. But it also allows us to be a multi-generational church in this city, raising up godly men and women because we want healthy, growing, mature Christians making disciples. This value is not just my purpose. It's not just our staff's purpose or maybe our small group leaders' purpose. Story Hill Church, and if you're brand new, this is our vision. This is who we are as a church. We are united as a family on mission, called to love our city and campus. So 2 questions in response to all this. One is the most important. Have you made a personal decision to commit your life to Jesus? I know that many of you might be just checking out church, or you maybe here for the first time trying to understand if this is something for you, and you hear all these things, and just like Paul's audience up on top of the rock overlooking Athens, here is the gospel, unapologetically, and what will you do with it? Sometimes we believe like, man, like there's a God, he can never love me. I'm so ashamed of what I've done, or maybe I don't have everything figured out and I need to understand more. It's simple. What do you say in response to who Jesus is? Commit your life to him. And then tell somebody. Like, come find me after service, or go to the connection table on your way out and fill out a card if you're like too nervous to talk to someone, and say like, I want to become a Christian. I have so many questions. Like, if you're connected to a smaller group, like just tell someone, raise your hand. But if you are here and you are a Christian, where has God placed you? Do you know that so many times we as Christians believe that I'm not there yet, so it's like I'm waiting for that next thing, then like God will do some stuff. It's like, well, I mean, you know, I know that God might want to use me now, but like maybe when I get here. And we always like look ahead as if we're finally going to arrive. When God, or when Jesus told his disciples to go, he's like, the language is like, as you are going. So no matter where you are or where you're, you know, what you're doing, like as you are going, be focused on others. And so right now in your life, there is someone, a coworker, a roommate, a family member, someone in your sorority house or your fraternity house or in your class or job. I mean, like, there is someone that God has uniquely gifted you to leverage your life to allow that person to hear the good news about Jesus. And I know you might be thinking like, well, you don't know my situation. Like, I might get fired if I talk about that, or like there's history there. Like, guys, we're all in the same boat. This is not something that's just easy. But I think when we reorient our focus and we understand what's truly important, we see the thing that really matters. And it's that person's soul. That person was made in the image of God, and they need someone to be Jesus in their life. And do you know what? That is you. If you're here and you're a Christian, that is you. Leverage your life. And then, this is an invitation to everyone. Join us. We're not like begging for people. We're asking, like, do you want to join this mission? And join our family. I know that might be even weird language, but like we're just like a church family on mission together moving forward. All broken, all messed up, in need of God's grace. You'll find no perfect people here, but we move forward because the way Jesus lived is what we want to live. So, I'm going to pray. I'm going to invite our band back up, and we're just going to respond by crying out to Jesus. And maybe right now there is someone that is on your heart that there's a name, a coworker, a family member, a friend, someone. And I would ask that you just spend also a moment praying for that person and your relationship with them. Let's be the church. Let's be Jesus for others. Jesus, we just want to confess to you that we need you, that we don't have all the answers, and sometimes we're just scared. Lord, but you did the impossible for us. You came and pursued us when we needed you the most. So give us the same fortitude, passion, and zeal and excitement to live as you as we go through our life. I ask that you would bless our church right now, that we would be a force of gospel love and truth and grace for the people in this city and on this campus. That people would have an opportunity to hear what you've done for them, hear how you've changed our lives, and an invitation to join. And Jesus, if there's someone here today or even watching online, they're ready to take that step, I pray that you would give them the strength and the courage to commit to you. Lord, your word tells us that anyone who calls on your name is saved. Sometimes we overcomplicate what's so simple. And we're not saved by what we can do or how we can perform, but we're saved through your grace by faith alone. So may we believe. Jesus, now as we respond to you in worship, I pray that you are glorified because you alone are worthy. Thank you for sustaining, giving us life, and inviting us into your mission. Amen.